Number 4. So, I'm 14 years old. My mum trusts me a fair amount when I use the internet. I was selling trading cards on Craigslist, and I soon got a text on my phone saying someone was interested. He made an offer of $10 and said he would meet me on Monday around 5:30. I told my mum, and she said to call her when I left the house because she works every day, and it was a Saturday. On that Monday, I went to the place where we were going to meet, and he wasn't there. I texted him if he was coming, and he said he didn't want them anymore. I said that was fine and went back to my house. I was a little disappointed considering I didn't get my $10, but anyway, I woke up the next day and played some video games and checked my emails, you know, the normal teenager stuff. I then heard the doorbell ring. We live in a fairly safe neighborhood, so I opened the door, not seeing who it was. A man, about 6 foot, was standing there. I asked if I could help him, and he said in a mumbled voice,
"Are you still selling those cards?"
I said yes, and asked why. But all this time, I was wondering in the back of my head, how the fuck did this guy get my address? Since I didn't put my address on the ad. He nodded his head and stood there. He just looked at my body moving his head up and down while giving a silent moan. I was freaked out and said, "You have a nice day, sir," and shut the door. He then started knocking and slamming into the door for around 15 seconds. Since he didn't know I was home alone, I loudly said, "Dad, get the gun." Even though I didn't live with my dad, that's what my mum always said to yell when someone was at the door and not leaving me alone. The banging stopped instantly, and I ran to the phone and called my mum and told her everything. The guy was gone, and we never heard anything again. My mum still lets me use Craigslist, but I'm much more careful now.
Number 3.
I was a 13-year-old girl at the time this happened. I lived just around the corner from a 7-Eleven store, and my mum and I would walk there often for snacks. One day, I had just gotten some new clothes and really liked the way I looked in them. My mum asked if I wanted to walk to the store one night. It was barely starting to get dim outside, so I agreed. I wanted to wear my new clothes out anyway. We walked to the store, and I saw a very obviously drunk African-American guy stumbling at the bus stop nearby. He was muttering to himself and laughing. He noticed us and began walking towards us. I immediately got scared, and my mum positioned me to where I was behind her. We continued walking to the door of the 7-Eleven when he met up with us. He slurred some words, and we couldn't understand much. I think he was asking for money, but my mum said that she didn't have any to spare. He then lowered his eyes to me. My blood ran cold as he stared right into my eyes.
"Your eyes are such a pretty blue. You're a very beautiful girl. Can I say that?"
he said. My heart began to beat faster as a wave of unease spread over me. Now, I know he could have just been complimenting me, but the way he said it and looked at me, it just gave me chills. My mum stepped in front of me, blocking his view, and sternly said, "No, you can't say that." We hurriedly walked into the store. We got some snacks and ordered a pizza as the place had just begun serving hot and ready pizzas. Normally, we would walk home and come back for the pizza, as it took around 10 minutes to cook. As my mum paid, I noticed someone stumbling near the window of the store. I crept by it and hid by the wall so the person outside couldn't see me. I saw the man waiting right by the door. He was watching my mum pay. He was waiting for us to leave. I told my mum, and we decided that we should stay in the store. Well, when the 10 minutes passed, we got our pizza, and we really had no choice but to leave. Of course, the man was right there. He had waited the whole time. He smiled, and then said,
"Hey, you're back."
We didn't look at him, and quickly started walking towards our house. I looked back and noticed something chilling. He was following us. I told my mum, and we decided to walk the long way home to see if we could lose him. We definitely didn't want him to know where we lived. We walked across the parking lot and saw him pick up some of the flowers that were planted by the store. He began stumbling quicker towards us.
"Hey, come back. I've got something for you."
I wanted to cry as he continued to shout at me. He wasn't leaving us alone, so we went inside a liquor store right next to the 7-Eleven. He stopped outside the door and paced in front of it. He still had the flowers in his hands and was saying something to himself. We told the store owner what was happening, and he just said the man was drunk and we shouldn't worry. We were still concerned anyway, and decided to stay in the store until he left. He continued pacing by the door, looking at me, and saying things like,
"Come on, don't be like that. You're beautiful."
All in a slurred, deep voice. It was the way he was saying these things that made me feel the most uncomfortable. He wasn't saying it in a genuine, nice tone. He was saying it as if he was talking to a hooker or something. After 20 minutes, he finally left and we walked the rest of the way home. I looked at myself in my new clothes and felt disgusted. I hated the fact that I had been looked over and pursued like that. Plus, I was only 13 at the time and he had no right to act like that towards me. I hope I never see that freak again.
Number 2.
When I was about 8 years old, my grandparents had recently moved to North Florida. This area was the definition of BFE. The closest town was about an hour away. My grandparents had a close family friend with a grandson that I loved to play with. My grandparents were living in an RV parked approximately an acre away on Frank's property while their mobile home was being built. Frank had about 4 acres of property. Half of it was woods, which made for incredibly creepy nights when nightfall hit. After playing with Frank's grandson all day, I was worn out and exhausted. It was around 10 o'clock at night and completely pitch black outside. The only light came from the moon and stars. It was time to head back to my grandparents' RV. I attempted to call them to come pick me up from Frank's house, but there was no answer. I waited and called again about 20 minutes later. Still no answer. I figured they were asleep, and I did not want to wake up my grandfather. I let Frank's grandparents know that my grandparents were not answering to come and pick me up.
You're a young woman now. You can make the walk. It shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes. I'll even watch you from the window."
I didn't like the idea. People who lived there were much more relaxed with babysitting than people in the city where I'm from. I was a very frightful child, and was honestly scared of my own shadow. I reluctantly agreed. I was pretty embarrassed that I was so terrified. I decided to make the hike. As I began heading out, I realized that the grass was covered in water. Great, I thought. This is just what my clumsy self needs. It was about 45 degrees outside and lightly raining. I shivered, both from cold and fear. I did not like how ominous the woods looked directly to the left of me. I tried to sing a Disney song in my head and avoided looking to my left. From the corner of my eye, very far in the distance, I saw a man. He appeared to be sitting where the woods meets the clearing. I figured it was a friend of Frank's grandparents. They always had guests over. I ignored him and continued speed walking to my grandparents as fast as I could. The more I walked, the closer I got to this man, and the more I had wished I hadn't looked. The man was sitting in a beat-up old lawn chair. It was white and it looked ready to cave in. He had scraggly grey and brown hair with plenty of bald spots. He had incredibly pale skin with long arms and legs. They looked too long for his body, and he was wearing a dirty white tank top with even filthier jeans with holes. He was also wearing oversized red and dirty Converse shoes. They looked like fucking clown shoes. He looked about 30 pounds underweight, and he was very tall, about 6'2", I would say. Even sitting, he was way taller than my 8-year-old self. I began walking a little faster, practically jogging. I also began singing aloud. It was the way I used to cope with my being scared. In hindsight, that was incredibly foolish. To my horror, I heard the chair creak. The man stood up. When I looked back, he smiled, a disgusting yellow-toothed ear-to-ear grin. His teeth also looked large, almost like horse teeth. He began taking large strides towards me. I began to run. I was short, and 3 of my steps equaled 1 of his. My asthma also kicked in. My eyes were blurry from the rain rushing in them. I was running blindly, while this grinning hillbilly effortlessly gained on me. Like a cliché horror movie, I tripped. It was bound to happen. I was wheezing and blindly running for my life. Tears stung my eyes, and I scrambled to my feet covered in mud and continued running. I finally reached my grandparents' RV. I beat and beat on the door of my grandparents' RV. The man was about 5 feet away from me now. I began screaming, sobbing, and banging even harder on that door. I began to pray aloud. I thought that this was it for me. Until my tired grandma opened the door, and I practically stampeded her to the ground. I shut and locked the door. I hugged her, soaking wet and covered in mud. My grandma, knowing I do in fact have a very overreactive imagination, thought I was just scared of the dark and that my eyes were playing tricks on me. Frustrated, I told her to get Grandpa and to come see for herself.
"Oh, Brittany, there's nothing out here but animals for miles."
She entertained me though, and went outside without my grandfather and no weapon and in her bathrobe. But the man was gone, nowhere to be seen. I showed her the chair he was sitting on, and that didn't convince her. She told me to take a shower and to get some sleep. About 2 weeks later though, it was heard on the news that a man shot and killed his neighbour over the neighbour's son. Apparently, the neighbour was defending his 10-year-old son from this man. When my grandmother saw the mugshot of the man, her face turned white as a sheet. It perfectly matched my description. She ran into the RV's kitchen where I was making a bagel and hugged me. She hugged me for several minutes. She lightly explained the situation to me, leaving out details that may frighten me further. She believed me ever since that day. This has awakened a fear of clowns in me. My brain manifested the red shoes and the toothy yellow grin as a fucking clown. I still have nightmares to this day. I do always wonder though, what would have happened if that freak actually caught me? I thank God every day that I escaped.
Number 1.
So, about a month ago, I had my 5 friends over to my house for a party because I'm going to a different school soon. All was well until this guy walked past my house, slowly. He was jogging, but then he started walking. I didn't think anything of it. Maybe he was just cooling down. People like going for runs out here because it's quiet and there aren't many cars. I live in a really regional area and I have no neighbours for miles. I'm surrounded by cornfields since I'm in Indiana and all. We were in the front yard, sitting on the trampoline, playing Never Have I Ever. I watched the man pace back and forth in front of my driveway. I started to get weirded out, but I'm a paranoid person anyway, so I thought nothing of it. 5 minutes pass and he stopped. Now he's looking at me. I waved, thinking maybe he knew me, as our town is small and everyone really knows every other person. My boyfriend, Brent, then turned around and looked towards the road and looked at the guy. The guy then began walking up the driveway. Our driveway is really long, so that gave me plenty of time to get everyone to start running up to the house. We were running across my backyard, and the man was running behind us. We had about a 30-foot head start. I swung open the back door, and everyone hurried in. I fumbled with the lock and locked the door. Our porch doesn't have blinds because it's pretty much got windows everywhere. We ran upstairs into my room, which is above the porch. I heard him banging on the door.
"Let me in, you little bastards."
He began to mimic a little girl's voice.
"I want to play."
We were terrified. Who the hell was this man? What the hell did he want? Was he a child molester? What made the situation even worse was that my parents weren't home. They were over at a basketball game with my brother. Everyone over at my house was a girl, except for my boyfriend. I was bawling my eyes out, thinking we were going to die at 15. I was peeking at the window as everyone sat behind me, trying to get a glimpse. I heard glass break. I stopped crying almost instantly. I went into my parents' room, ever so silently. I grabbed a gun I knew my dad kept in his safe. I loaded it as he showed me, and I rushed back into my room. It felt really weird to be holding a gun, almost like I have too much power. I could take someone's life with this thing, and it horrified me. The whole situation did, to be honest. I gestured towards the window, still sniffling like an idiot. I unlatched it and slid it open, and ripped the screen open. Footsteps became louder in the distance. The roof over the porch was by my window, thank God. We helped Brent down the 6-foot drop so he could lift everyone down. When it was my turn, I heard the man coming up the stairs. I hurried out the window, shoving the gun in my waistband. Brent hoisted me down and I pulled out the gun again. We all didn't know what to do from there. We couldn't call the cops, there was no cell reception out here. "The tree," one of my friends whispered. One by one, we jumped onto the branch. It was easily a 4-foot jump, and if you miss, it's a 10-foot fall. I was the second to last to jump, Brent behind me. I urged Brent, and he jumped, and the branch snapped. He grabbed the branch under him, and lifted himself up. The man was in my room. He was walking really slowly, a rhythmic kind of thud, with almost a full second in between thumps. He flicked the light on, as I switched the gun off of safety. He popped his head out of the ripped screen, and I froze. He was bald, medium built, and maybe around 50. He was sweaty, literally dripping in sweat, and dirty. I could smell him 6 feet away. I was mortified to say the least.
"Wait, I want to play,"
he said, grunting as he fell back onto the floor in my room, throwing his foot out of the hole. I was near the edge, and by then, everyone had climbed down the tree, and they were yelling for me to jump and saying they'd catch me. I'm not a small girl, mind you. I weigh about 130 pounds, so catching me would not be easy. He began to climb out of the hole in the screen, and I shot the gun, not aiming. Rachel started crying, but I had only hit the house. His eyes were huge when he realized I was armed. I jumped off the roof, and they caught my torso, but not my legs. They had formed a circle, and my legs went through the middle of it where their fingertips met. My ankle was bent at an awkward angle, and I knew I had broke it. It was excruciatingly painful, but I was too terrified to notice. The man darted out of my room, and I saw him run through our yard, so he must have used the front door to escape. Emmy ran inside and got the landline phone, and she called my parents, and then the police. The scariest part is, my parents always warned me that there was a guy that lived not too far away from us who had molested his own daughters, and was sent to prison for it. He finally got released from jail about 10 years ago and was allegedly following kids home in his van and told one of his victims to be good as she was running behind a local bar. He's never done anything since, or at least that we know of. I'm just thankful I had a weapon, because if I didn't, I would be dead, or a sex slave, or something worse. G'day mates, it's B-Buster here. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video guys. Thanks again to the Hive members that bravely shared their stories for us all to hear. And for the chance to have your story feature in a video, you can send your story to my email, which is in the description below. And be sure to keep them coming guys, as this channel relies upon your stories to continue. Also guys, please do me a little favour and just state in your email what your story is about in the description, and also provide me with a short written statement of consent just so that I can be above board with everything. And also remember to tell me in the email if you would like to remain anonymous, and please also change any names if you don't want particular names to be shared. It would be awesome if you could like, share, comment and subscribe if you're new. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for updates throughout the week. Thanks again for tuning in guys, and as always, I'll see you mates in the next one.